Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial is going to be another demo cake that I decorated for all the bridal expos that are happening now. So just have to imagine that you can do exactly the same decorations on an actual cake. You just skip the parts of me getting the foam dummies frosted and put together. So let's get right to it. And this one featured some wafer paper flowers. I was kind of going for a peony-esque design or type of flower. So I'm using my peony cutters and some flower formers. Well, actually, these are the veining silicone molds. I know there's another name for it, but for some reason right now I cannot come up with it. But I will try to add some links for you in the video description on where you can get those. But we're starting with, these are 1.5 inches, I believe I used 1.5 inches styrofoam balls. And I just used a floral wire and made a hook in the end and shoved it straight on through for the support. And to use as a stem, basically. And then I'm just using 0 grade wafer paper. And I had just used my cutters and traced around them to make my templates with. And I did 3 different sizes. And then I just used my veining tool to press that shape into the wafer paper. You can see just a faint line of it. You can barely see it, but that way you avoid using any pens or pencils if that bothers you. Then cut out all of those different sizes. Like I said, I did 3 different ones for each flower. And I'm just using some wafer paper conditioner. It's a combination of, well, actually, I'll just put the recipe in the video description. That's a little bit easier. But wafer paper conditioner is going to give the wafer paper flexibility is what it's going to do. And I just added my food coloring. I used petal dust in the wafer paper conditioner to add color to them. And there was an orangish, peach orange color, and I did also like a deeper green. Now with the wafer paper, it's always going to be a little bit more lighter than what you think it's going to be. So just keep that in mind. And I added that to wafer paper conditioner and brushed it on. Then I just pressed them into the silicone molds with some cornstarch. Guys, I'm going to be doing, I don't want to say too much, but I'll get more in detail with my wafer paper flowers in another form at some point. We'll just say that. But the cornstarch is what keeps them from sticking. And then I just put them on top of and inside silicone molds. And I'm also making some leaves. And I just cut a plain petal shape, and use my leaf veiner and did the exact same thing. Adding some of the floral wire into the base of the leaves and then set them aside to dry. Now, wafer paper sticks to wafer paper. So the best way to get your petals onto the styrofoam ball is to wrap the styrofoam ball with wafer paper. And I just used, what did I use? I think I just used wafer paper glue. That's another thing I'm going to need to add a link in the video description, is wafer paper glue. And I just used that to get the wafer paper to stick to the ball. And you can attach these leaves right away. They do need to dry overnight. I prefer overnight in the silicone molds, but once they're dry, you can attach them straight onto the ball with the dampened wafer paper already around it. This part goes really quickly. And I used the smaller ones at the top, then I went down to the medium, and then lastly the large at the base of the styrofoam ball. I think at this point, once I got to the medium ones, yeah, I went ahead and I bent the floral wire and hung it on a piece of styrofoam to let it firm up for a bit, maybe an hour, and then I went in with my larger petals. I'm really transferring over to wafer paper most of the time instead of gum paste for flowers. I just find they look so much more realistic. And then I set it in my flower former to dry overnight again. Isn't that pretty? I just love those. And now we're going to quickly add our buttercream to our styrofoam. Now I attached the styrofoam to the board with just some hot glue. I'm keeping the middle fairly buttercream free because sometimes when you have buttercream across the whole top of your styrofoam, when you put your tier on top and if there's any weight to it, it can kind of squish the buttercream a little bit. So I like to go back and remove, use the next tier up to mark on top of your styrofoam, on top of the one below it, where you need to remove the buttercream so that it's just styrofoam sticking to styrofoam. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And do the same technique with all of them. I like to put the buttercream on the sides of the styrofoam first. That way you can use your hand. You can see me doing it right there. Use your hand to spin the styrofoam, the fake tier, and get your sides real smooth, and then go in and do the top. I just find that a lot easier. And that's backwards from how I do my real cakes. It's just that styrofoam is light, and it likes to scooch around, so it's better to have something to hold on to on the top. And here's where I'm marking out the next tier to be attached. And yes, I do go back and put some fresh buttercream, but it's a very thin layer, just to get the next tier to stick. And then once I got those all assembled, I like to drive a sharpened dowel all the way through all the cakes. Don't mind me, I'm talking to somebody there. And then I cut the dowel a little shorter, maybe half an inch shorter than the foam, and I countersink it into the foam and then fill in that hole. Now for our hoop. This is a gold hoop that I already had. And I'm just using this to display our wafer paper flowers. And I did do a couple of buds. And what the buds are, basically the same thing. You just use way less layers of petals, maybe 2 layers, and kind of keep them closer to the foam so they don't go out like they do on the bigger peonies. And I'm just using the wire that I had driven through the styrofoam ball to attach it to the hoop. Now, this is not an edible thing here, obviously, and you would want to tell your clients to remove this before serving because the flowers are attached to the wire or the hoop with hot glue. It's not going to affect the cake. In fact, that doesn't even touch the cake in the way that it's applied. Just look at it like a topper, a non-edible topper that people put on cakes all the time. What do? Before you serve it? You remove it. It's really that simple. And just remind your event planner or the bride of that. Just remove it. And I attached the leaves at the end. And now I'm adding some texture to the buttercream. I wanted to add texture to the buttercream. I wanted the background to be fairly simple. But I also wanted it to have a little bit something to it. So it's just the ivory on ivory buttercream applied in kind of a stucco type way. I stipple it on there and then smooth it with your scraper, but don't scrape it off. Just leave kind of a flat texture. Now I'm going back in with some more of the wafer paper that I colored with the dry dust in this situation. I just brushed it on, and then I just ripped it in pieces. I dampened the surface. I sprayed water onto the wafer paper and attached it that way. Actually, it's piping gel on the cake. Then I dampened the wafer paper and just applied it to the piping gel. And then you could leave it like that, but we wanted more of the kind of draped kind of effect. So the outside pieces that I'm dampening, they're bigger pieces, and they're going to stick to the wafer paper that is stuck to the piping gel. That to me is the best way to get your wafer paper to stick. And I'm using my clothing steamer to just add some movement to it. And then once that has set up for a little bit, I'm going back in and just using a sponge in that green coloring that I use for the green peonies. I just added some more water to that just to thin it down a little bit because it had kind of started to thicken up because it had been sitting out for a while. Just added some more water to it, and I'm using this as kind of a paint and applying it with just a sponge. Now we're going to attach our hoop with some more flower wire, or floral wire. Sorry, I said that weird. I just bend it into a hook shape, a U shape, and just, it's kind of like a staple, really, and just push that into the foam. Now you could do that again on a real cake, make them longer, a little bit longer, and put a little buttercream behind it also for a little bit more stability if you're going to be doing this on an actual cake. And again, remind the customer to remove those. Now I had some extra petals, and those are, it's always a good thing to make more petals than you need, because you can use those to kind of, I'm sorry, my back of my head and my back are in the frame too much. I know it. But anyway, those are really great for camouflaging any place where you have any hooks or anything that you need to camouflage. And then I added a few dried artificial flowers to tie it all in together. And this is our final product. I hope you liked it. I hope you got something from it. Please like, subscribe, and share. Do all the things. And we'll catch you on the next one.